of the sun. Our story is not over, it's just begun. From Timbuktu to the streets of Soweto, Africa speaks and the world must echo. Strength of Africa, we stand tall. United, claim the truth, we break the wall. Up from the roots to the skies, we rise again. This is our voice, let the world hear men. Strength of Africa TV.
In a world obsessed with destinations, we often forget where the journey begins. Before passports and plane tickets, before degrees and job titles, before fluency in foreign tongues, there were stories. Stories about Africa, stories from Africa, and stories in Africa. Names whispered in village squares, songs sung in mother tongues, meals made from memory, not recipes. But somewhere between migration and modernization, something got lost. Too many African children, both at home and abroad, are growing up fluent in foreign countries' culture, but illiterate in their own. They know every word of the latest pop hit, but nothing of their grandparents' wisdom. They chase success, yet they feel a quiet emptiness they can't explain, and this is quite worrisome. This episode of Strength of Africa TV is not just a conversation, it's a call. A call to every parent, a call to every teacher, a call to every elder, and a call to every leader raising children inside and outside the continent Africa. A call to prioritize the route before the route, to raise not just global citizens, but Africans who walk in pride, who walk in clarity, and who walk in purpose. Because culture isn't a costume, culture is a compass, and if we don't pass it on intentionally, the world will erase it by default. Let's change that, one child, one story, one route at a time. This is Strength of Africa TV, where we reconnect Africa and her children across oceans, across generations, and across identities. A space where culture, power, and truth meet. Today's episode is titled Roots Before Routes, Raising Globally Conscious Africa-Centered Children. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are right now. Welcome back to Strength of Africa TV. I still remain your host, Adebayo Oladokun. And today, we dive into a topic that echoes across dining tables, across living rooms, and across school meetings. How do we raise African children properly to know who they are and not just where they live and what they watch? This is $1 million question. This episode is for every parent, every educator, and every leader asking the question, how can I raise children who are globally skilled and culturally grounded? Because we are not just raising children, we are raising the next generation of Africans. And if we are not intentional, the system will raise them for us. And we must at all costs avoid this. Kwame Nkrumah of blessed memory reminded us that a people without a knowledge of their past history, of their past origin and culture, is like a tree without roots. And today, Ibrahim Traore reminds us that if we lose our culture, if we lose our identity, then we lose everything, even if we have riches in abundance. One of the greatest threats to African identity, both at home and in the diaspora, is not violence or racism, it is erasure. Many African children at home and abroad grow up knowing more about Halloween and Valentine than about the festival of Osun in Nigeria, Hamawo in Ghana, Timkat in Ethiopia, Ves in Morocco, and their local festivals. They can recite European fairy tales, but not the proverbs of the Igbo, the proverbs of Ashanti, of Yoruba, of the Zulu. We call this cultural rootlessness. They know where they live. but they don't know where they are from. Quite unfortunate. When roots are cut off, identity becomes fragile or dead, and children will search for belonging in whatever culture that offers them validation, even if that culture devalues their own heritage or it demeans their own culture. Raising African-centered children begins with 3 foundational pillars. And out of these 3 pillars, the most important one here is the language. According to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a towering figure in African literature and thought, it said that when you erase a people's language, you erase their culture and history. Language is not just a tool, it's a world view. Teach them to speak your language, and they will begin to see the world through African eyes. Teach them greetings, songs, idioms. Even if you didn't grow up fluent, start where you are. It will go a long way. Secondly, history. Children must know that Africa is not a continent of problems, but a continent of power. Tell them about Hannibal of Carthage, Ya Asantewa, Africa of Steve Biko, Samora Machel, and Wangari Maathai. Let their heroes come from their heritage. Let their heroes come from their within. And thirdly, spirituality and values. Whether Christian, Muslim, or traditional, African spirituality centers around community, nature, ancestry, and harmony. Teach them the African value of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Culture is cult more than thoughts. It's in the daily rituals, not just the big lectures. Simple acts like cooking and naming traditional meals among the family members, storytelling every weekend, playing African music in the house, wearing African fabrics proudly, watching African movies and documentaries, visiting the continent as a family. These are not just activities, they are identity rituals. They remind our children, you come from a people, you come from a race, you belong. Let grandparents tell their stories. Let children ask questions. Culture survives through conversation between the old generation and the new generation. In most Western schools, Africa is often portrayed as a victim of colonization, a victim of poverty, a victim of war. It's our job to provide the counter-narrative. That is why we need to supplement school with African-centered books and lessons. We need to encourage projects on African kingdoms, on African inventions, on African scientists, and on African artists. We need to use documentaries like Africa, the Great Civilizations, or When We Were Kings to teach our children. Expose them to leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Miriam Makeba, Chinua Achebe, and Patrice Lumumba. Don't wait for the school to validate their identity. Reclaim it yourself. Children don't grow in isolation. Their peer group matters. Connect them with other African-conscious families. Enroll them in Pan-African youth camps or virtual African culture classes. Let them see role models who look like them and love where they are from. Environment shapes identity. Surround them with symbols of pride, like African flags, African artworks, African codes, and African heroes. It's not about creating a bubble. It's about building a strong base. Today's children live online, so we must dominate their feeds with truth. Follow African content creators like this channel, Strength of Africa TV, African educators, and African historians. Watch Nollywood classics together and African animations. Use TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram to teach Swahili proverbs or Fulani folktales. Turn smartphones into tools of reconnection, not tools of assimilation. Let them follow creators like Dr. Chikaezeanya-esiobu, Inyoluwa Aboyeji, and Dr. Mumbi Siraki. Raising African-centered children is not a trend. It's a generational calling. We are not just raising professionals. We are raising nation builders. Children who will invest in Africa. Children who will innovate for Africa. And children who will fight for Africa, even if they were born abroad. Teach them that Africa is not just a continent, it's a calling. Our greatest legacy won't be the degrees they earn. It will be the pride they carry wherever they are and whenever they are being called upon. Let us remember, before we give them routes to Harvard, routes to Toronto, or routes to Sydney, let's give them routes in Kampala, routes in Accra, routes in Addis Ababa, routes in Bamako, routes in Lagos, in general, routes in Africa. So that wherever they go, they never forget where they are from. Route before route. That's how we raise global children who walk like Africans, think like Africans, and rise for Africa whenever they are being called upon. Raising African-centered children is a long game. It doesn't happen in one conversation. It doesn't happen in one documentary or in one trip. It happens daily. It happens continuously. It happens in how we speak, in what we celebrate, and in who we elevate in their eyes. There are 5 powerful recommendations to anchor this journey, which will be provided for us today. 1, we need to start early. Introduce African stories, African languages, and pride from toddler age. Identity begins in the nursery, not in the university. Make culture a habit, not a holiday. Don't wait for Independence Day or any special occasion to speak your language or wear African fabric. Normalize your culture every day, every time, not a one-time occasion. Create their heroes. Who your children admire shapes who they become. Make sure they know Nkrumah, Ya Asantewa, Obafemi Awolowo, Nelson Mandela, Wangari Maathai, Thomas Sankara, just as well as they know Western celebrities. Invest in Africa-focused education tools. Buy African storybooks. Stream African cartoons and movies. Enroll in virtual or in-class language classes for your children. Culture is a daily investment and an ongoing habit. It is not a one-off project. Connect them back to the soil. Visit home regularly. If you can't travel physically, travel virtually. Map their village. Let them listen to grandparents' stories. Cook ancestral meals. Let them know Africa is not a distant dream. Africa is in their DNA. It's in our DNA. Because the truth is this: without roots, the route doesn't matter. You will arrive, but you forget where you came from. Raise children who are not just globally skilled, but continentally loyal to their roots, loyal to Africa. Family, hear me well. Routes may take our children to ends of the earth. They may study in America. They may work in Europe or build companies in Asia. But my brothers and sisters, without roots, their routes are half-complete journeys. A tree without roots cannot stand, neither can it survive. A child without roots cannot withstand the global pressure. Roots are identity. Roots are anchor. Roots are legacy from one generation to another generation. When we give our children roots before routes, we give them a compass in confusion, a shield against inferiority, and the power to say with pride, I am an African. I am enough. I am the continuation of greatness, because Africa is a great continent. Let us raise Africa-centered children who walk tall anywhere in the world, not as wanderers, but as builders, not as followers, but as leaders. Roots before routes, family, this is not just a saying, it is survival, it is legacy, it's our sacred duty to our children and to our continents. My fellow Africans, what is one African tradition, story, or value we are passing on to the new or next generation? Let's share these ideas together to inspire parents across Africa and in the diaspora. You can comment on this video, share your thoughts on the comment section. Visit our website for more engagements on this. My fellow Africans, and those who feel Africa in their blood, in their actions, in their thoughts, if this episode moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a parent, a friend, or a family member. Discuss it with your community. Raise the standard. Subscribe to Strength of Africa TV on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. Support our mission to restore the cultural pride, to restore the historical truth, and to restore an African-centered legacy, one conversation at a time. Remember, the most radical act in a neo-colonial world is to raise children who know where they come from. My brothers and sisters, thank you for tuning in today. I'm still your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this has been Strength of Africa TV. Until next time, stay rooted, stay proud, and stay African. See you in the next episode, which I believe is going to be a jaw-dropping episode that will glue you to your chair. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.
For the journey, we plant the seed. Stories of wisdom, the truths we need. From mother's lullaby to the